Hey everyone, it's Natasha from AxelsonAcademy, and I'm back today to talk to you about the easiest way I have found to do a compare and contrast think aloud with students. So a lot of times, especially with younger readers, they love it when you read them multiple versions of the same story. And we're really lucky because there are a lot of versions out there, especially of your more traditional fairy tales. So in the last two videos, you saw me read Little Red Hen and Manana Iguana. Manana Iguana being the desert themed version of the Little Red Hen. And there's even more versions of the Little Red Hen out there. And if you look up any of your major fairy tales, Cinderella, you will find multiple versions. Sometimes they're modernized, sometimes they're from a different point of view, sometimes they're in a different location like these two, or a different culture. And to have students thinking through the similarities and differences actually goes back to Common Core standards that begin in kindergarten. Now we know from how the brain learns that linking new information to previously learned information makes it much easier to remember. So if we have these set fairy tales or set stories that have similarities that run through them that we then link a new version to, it helps us to remember those new cultural experiences, the new vocabulary that that version brings to us because we've linked it to something we already know. Now, one of the great ways that we can help students as they're beginning learners for comparison and contrast is to use graphic organizers. And one of the most common ones that we see is a Venn diagram. So a Venn diagram consists of two circles that overlap in the middle. And the idea with a Venn diagram is that you've taken two separate things, two separate circles, and we're going to see how those two things are different, and the differences would be written in the parts that don't overlap. And then in the part of those circles that overlap, we write the comparison of how those two things are the same. Now, as a teacher, I had a giant Venn diagram on the wall of my classroom, and I actually had added another circle here that could be removed or not, so I could do a comparison between three things. I don't know what we call that, a trigram, something. But we had the Venn diagram, we could add in the third circle, and we used this all the way up through 8th grade. This was laminated so students could come up and stick Post-it notes on, as you can see in the picture. You know, these are your older students and they're still getting used out of a Venn diagram. Even your preschool students, I see now, using Venn diagrams as an organizational strategy to their thinking, and it's very powerful. So one way you could do this is to have a Venn diagram, small or large, your choice. This is fine for a small group of students that might be sitting in front of you. And if you have non-readers, you might be doing something with pictures. Put the pictures of things that only happen in Little Red Hen on the pink side, and they would put the Little Red Hen picture there, the planting the wheat, the making the bread. Put the pictures of the things that are just Manana Iguana on the purple side, and here we would put the characters of the desert over here. Now, as students get to be readers or beginning readers, you're going to start adding text into this. So now for this particular Venn diagram, I have my Little Red Hen on this side. I have my Manana Iguana on this side, and what they both have in the center. And I went through, this is the great thing with AI. Literally, you can type in compare and contrast whatever two stories you have, and it will spit you out a whole bunch of ways are similar and different. Now you do have to check and make sure that the AI is right. But in this case, you know, it was a piece of cake. So I was able to cut out some of these labels, and on my Venn diagrams, I like to leave little Velcro pieces here so I can use these in the future and possibly even laminate the different text that I have here so I can take them off and on, which is great. And I would have students take what I already have written. If they need additional support, these are some pretty long words, so I'm thinking this is more end of first grade, second grade even. You could have picture support with this too, making bread, and then I put a little picture of a bread attached to that so that I would know. And I would have students take, we could do this as a group, a small group. You can make these personalized so that each child has a mini Venn diagram at their table where they do the sort themselves. And I have making bread on a farm, farm animals like the hen, the cat, the duck, all English words in that version. Over here on Manana Iguana, instead of making bread, they were planning a party. It was in the desert, so they had desert animals, the iguana, snake, tortoise, and rabbit. And we did use some Spanish vocabulary in there. Both of them, you have a main character that's planning a project. You have friends that don't help. You have a main character that does it on their own. And there's a lesson learned that things are better when we work together. In this version, it's kind of the hard lesson at the end. Sorry, you don't get the bread because you didn't work with me. And with Manana Iguana, they come together and help clean up at the end so they get to share those leftovers. But this is a great jumping off place for discussion on comparison and contrasting ideas in a book. And you can have this then as an anchor chart in your classroom that you return to it again and again. And for my teacher candidates out there that might be watching this, an anchor chart is something that you have up in your classroom that you come back to again and again. Think of an anchor as holding that ship steady. Your anchor charts are those strong foundational charts that you have in your classroom that are the focus again and again and just hold things together. Your Venn diagram is going to be one of those. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.